Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Ways and Means Subcommittee for October 3rd, 2016. Will everyone please rise and salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight, we have 4 issues on the agenda. These are motions that were submitted by Councillor Rotondo. The first motion is 16-210, investigating the feasibility of installing solar panels on all municipal buildings. The second motion is 16-211, relative to the Community Preservation Act. The third motion is relative to taking by eminent domain 2426 Furness Street. And the final one is 16-263, motion by Councillor Rotondo requesting that the State Auditor perform an audit of CDM for all work conducted within the city. The members of the committee that are here this evening are Councillor Haas, Councillor Rotondo, Councillor Patch, and myself. I'm going to open this up to Councillor Rotondo, seeing it's his motions. We'll take Councillor. I'd like to take the first one first. And by the way, I'd also like to mention that Councillor Guinasso and Councillor Keefe are here this evening also. Councillor Rotondo.
Thank you, Councillor Powers. Regarding the solar issue, I just think there's a feasibility in doing that. I believe we can get federal and state tax credits. If we build any new municipal buildings, we should look into that. That's pretty much what that stands for. If there's an appetite to do that on our schools, then perhaps the mayor can look at that accordingly. But that's pretty much what it is just trying to influence the use of solar. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rotondo. Councillor Haas.
Matter of fact, I think this is a good motion. I'm surprised it hasn't been done as of today. It's something that's long overdue, and I'm for it.
Any other councillors? Councillor Guinasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a member of the subcommittee, but I also have to add my insight into what I believe is the solar panel on municipal buildings. They are, I would say, it is an advantage for solar panels, but I don't think on the buildings per se. There's 2 factors. One, for fire factors that the firefighters have found it very difficult in recent years to work an ongoing fire when they have panels on the roof. And secondly, it's the unsightly look that they present. If these panels can be placed on the ground, as they are in some other communities, then I'm all for it. That's preservation, and obviously we're saving money for the taxpayer. But I think there is, and I think the councillor asked for investigating the feasibility. So given the course of nature, when we see all the results of our investigating of this particular request, I think as many inputs as we can be placed upon this, we do so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Keefe.
Thank you, Chairman Powers. I think this is a really good motion, and I would be in full favor of it. And recognizing that we've only just begun with the solar paneling and solar power, and I too have been hesitant for some of the look from my own property, and but I am starting to dip into it a little bit more further. I think where some of the municipal buildings do have flat roofs and you're not going to be able to see them from street level, they would probably be okay, but the size of them are shrinking literally each year, and more companies are investing into solar energy and how to make it so that it's, I guess, less unsightly. So I think that this is the direction the city should enter into when it comes to being more energy efficient, because, of course, it's going to save money for the city, it's going to save money for the taxpayer. So I'd be in full favor of looking into this.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe. I myself am going to support this motion. I think it's an excellent motion on behalf of Councilor Rotondo. The only, where it's just asking to investigate the feasibility, I think we should be doing that as much as possible on every issue that comes before us. The only thing I'd like to make sure is that happens is that given the hurricane, some of the roofs on these buildings have not been fully repaired. I'll give you a prime example, the building we're sitting in, and also the youth center. And I think those buildings, every building should be inspected to guarantee the integrity of the structure. We certainly wouldn't want to start adding these on and have problems with leaking or anything like that because of prior problems from the hurricane. So I'm going to support this motion, and I hope my colleagues will too. And I'd like to recognize Council President Guinasso, who just came into the meeting. Council, would you like to speak on this? This is 16-210. It's a motion by Councilor Rotondo investigating the feasibility of installing solar panels on all municipal buildings.
No, I think it speaks for itself.
Pardon me?
It speaks for itself.
Thank you very much. Will you call the roll on the motion, please?
On Councilor Rotondo's motion relative to the installation of solar panels on all municipal buildings, Councilor Haas? Yes. Yes. Councilor Morabito is absent. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotondo? Yes. Council President Guinasso? Yes. Yes, and Chairman Powers?
Yes.
Yes, the motion will be favorably recommended to the full City Council.
The next item before us is with regard to, it's 16-211 with regard to the Community Preservation Act. This is a motion that was submitted by Councilor Rotondo. And so I'm going to call on Councilor Rotondo first. Councilor Rotondo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, at this point, it's a moot issue for the simple fact that this should have been taken up a month ago, at the very least. The issue is this is a product that is presented by the state to return revenue that is garnered to the city. You can off-parlay taxes on those people who do not live in the city and yet own property within the city and use it as rental income, basically as a commercial property. And for a town like Dracut, who was able to raise $3 million off of their Preservation Act and build senior housing with it, as well as a host of other communities that did so many great things with their Community Preservation Act, we are going to have to wait till next year. In fact, Beverly did the same thing, creating affordable housing for frail seniors. Belchertown did the same thing for first-time home buyers, so that people who wanted to buy homes within the town of Belchertown would be able to go to the city and take that money and use it to buy property within the city, therefore keeping their residents put. This is a great vehicle that we should have taken advantage of, and I'll probably represent it again next year so that I can go on the ballot. At this point, it cannot go on the ballot because of the time frame. I was hoping to have put it on during the primary, but for some reason, it wasn't taken up. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilor Rotondo. Councilor Haas?
At this time, since Councilor Rotondo, I guess he's going to withdraw it. George?
Well, that's up to the chairman. I mean, at the end of the day, Bob, it's moved. It can't,
Right. This year it cannot go on.
yeah, it should have been put on. We've lost probably close to $1 million to $2 million because we did not act.
Well, is that an estimate or a guesstimate?
No, that's a fact.
Okay.
That's based upon 24,000 units in the city of Revere at 1.5%, where 12,383 of those units are non-domicile.
So you're saying we've lost $1 million?
We have not been able to collect between $1 million and $2 million based upon that number. That's correct. It's
Councilor
not a
Key.
burn rate.
Councilor Haas. Do you want to speak?
No.
Councilor Keefe.
Just for some clarity, doing some work, and I do think that a Community Preservation Act could possibly garner some good, but recognize it's not money that we turned away. It's money that we would be essentially taxing citizens of the city, or it would essentially be somewhat of a tax. Understanding that maybe, in some cases, they would not be owner occupants of the city, they'd be renters, but it still would be a tax. So just because the money's there doesn't know, and listen, and I want to try and use that money, and I do want to try and uphold certain standards, but it's tax revenue that we would increase on someone. And yes, if we could, the language doesn't automatically mean that they would be non-owner occupants. That would be another piece of legislation.
That isn't correct.
It is no, it absolutely is not correct. You do not, that's almost bias to only tax a non-owner occupant.
The Community Preservation Act, which they're doing in Chelsea, which they've passed, and since you've done so much research on it, you should probably take a look to the 186 communities that actually have it. So then they're wrong, because that's what they've done in over 100 of their communities.
It is a tax, correct?
It is a tax, that's correct, in which you levy upon people who do not own or occupy their property. So, I mean, if you want to put more apartment buildings in the city, which you voted for, and you don't want to tax those people for it, that's fine, that's your choice.
No, it's an additional tax. They're already paying tax. They're already paying
They're
taxes.
using services, they're putting children in our community that are costing us $10,000 to $15,000 a child.
And they're
Hey, but
paying
listen, Patrick,
homeowners tax. I'm just
you
for
can
the
vote your
facts.
way. You can
I'm just
vote your
stating
way.
that they are, listen, George, Mr. Rotondo, I don't disagree with your want for it. All I'm saying is it is a tax. It's an additional tax on
There's
top
no
of what the
question.
property tax.
Councilor Keefe has the floor, Councilor.
I thought I was answering his questions, but if Councilor Janino would like to interfere in this conversation, she can get up and be the president, as she had ordered you to bang the gavel. Enough of that.
Councilor, let's do away with
Enough
the
of that.
diatribe tonight.
Enough of that. Enough of that.
By
If he's
no-
going to ask a question, I'm going to answer his question.
And Council, Chairman Powers, I appreciate that very much, and I'm not trying to get into an argument with anyone, and I respect
No,
that.
I understand
I
that.
respect the, and I'm okay with that, and I think you are being very respectful as I am to you. I just see it, and I just want to make sure that the people out there see it as, I don't want to lose opportunities to generate revenue for the city, and I think that we should look at more ways to generate revenues. This is one way, and this isn't a bad way, but there's no guarantees, one, and two is, it isn't, I just want to make sure people know is, we didn't pass up on $2 million or $1 million, we passed up on taking from people $1 to $2 million. So that's just what it is. We're not losing money, we're just not taking it from someone. Which is a
Mr.
big
Chairman,
difference.
through you to Patrick Keefe, Councilor Keefe.
Councilor Rotondo, go ahead.
You're partially right in that part of that money was that, but we're talking about the reciprocal money that the state gives back to you. That's the money that we're missing. And there is no doubt on it, it's a tax towards those people who do not live in this community, that put in those immense, apartment complexes like Overlook Ridge, like the ones at Shaw. So yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Well, Councilor, you keep alluding to apartments. We've got a structure going up down on Revere Beach Boulevard that they're doing as a matter of right. They're going 5 stories. They could have gone 12.
Mr. Chairman, I totally agree with you.
And that's going to provide $660,000 a year in extra tax revenue to the city.
Mr. Chairman, I totally agree with you. My point isn't that. My point is that it goes after those people that are not domiciled. So I totally agree with you.
Well, I think everybody that owns commercial property, and I consider anything 3 units and above as commercial property, should be paying an extra tax on that.
Then you would agree with this particular Preservation Act?
Councilor Patch. Councilor Giannino? Okay. The next item we're going to take up is a motion by Councilor Rotondo relative to the taking by eminent domain of 24-26 Furness Street. This is, I believe, in Councilor Keefe's ward. Councilor Keefe? Councilor Keefe? Is this in your ward?
Yes, it is.
Would you like to speak?
I'd be happy to. I certainly would err on the maker of the motion to speak first, or the committee members.
Fine, immaterial. Councilor Rotondo?
The property is a blighted property. I think at this point, we have the right by law to take it by eminent domain. In fact, we could have even used some of the money from the Preservation Act had it been enacted to take this property. In other communities, they actually use that money to take these properties and develop them for affordable housing for the people of their community. And that's all there is to it. Councilor Keefe is well aware of this property, and so is Nick Catanazzo. I think it's time to act. I think we should, use the power of law and take this blighted property like we did with, properties on Warren Street, in particular 60. So I think that's something that's worth doing, and I'd like to forward that to the mayor accordingly.
Yeah, I'd like to just add a point of information there, if I may. I spoke with the mayor's office today, and my understanding is that there was an administrative order issued in Chelsea District Court. There's nobody living in that property right now, and at some point, we are going to be the recipients of that property. So there's no one in there right now, Councilor. I'm sure you'll be happy to hear that.
Oh, I'm tickled to death by it. I think that's a great thing that the administration did. I think Councilor Keefe, myself, and the administration pushed this issue, as well as Mrs. Holland, who has been dealing with it for the past 5 years. And, that's teamwork, and I think that's a good thing.
Thank you, Councilor Rotondo. Any other councilors want to speak on this? Councilor Keefe.
Thank you, and that is great news. And I was told that the search warrant was administered a few months back. I think we heard about that. So it's good that we're working on moving forward with this property. It is a very blighted property, which the city has gone and cleaned up just a bit. But if the bank that currently owns it is unwilling to, I don't understand how a bank could be that big, that property is easily valued at $300,000 to $400,000 right now as is, wouldn't put it on the market and sell it tomorrow to have someone rehab it. But if we're able to take it and use it because the bank doesn't want to be responsible for it, I think that's a great thing, so.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe.
Thank you.
Any other councilors want to speak? Okay, the next item on the agenda is 16-263, motion by Councilor Rotondo, requesting the State Auditor to perform an audit of CDM for all work conducted within the city. Councilor Rotondo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman. Let's first put this out there. This is not to say that CDM is doing anything wrong, but when you have the expenditure of $20 to $30 to $50 million of taxpayers' money, it only makes good sense to have an audit to ensure that they're doing it correctly, to find out if there's any other ways that can be done better. And I think that's something that's simple. I'll give you an example. There was a lateral line that myself and Joanne McKenna, Councilor McKenna of Ward 1 had asked for down on Winthrop Parkway. And that whole area was getting flooded. Well, CDM had a proposal, and quite frankly, it was different than what was proposed by the people at the DPW. The one that the DPW had recommended actually cost us thousands of dollars less, and it's now functioning. So I think, more eyes on a process can only save money for our taxpayers. Considering we have a $100 million decree from the EPA, we haven't had an audit based upon this. It's only sound business practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotondo. Councilor Guinasso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a member again as I speak, but I just wanted to bring to light some of my review of CDM. About a month and a half ago, I read in the Boston Globe that CDM was cited and fined for derelict of duty. And so there was some sort of gap in what their oversight was, and they weren't performing up to their specs and performance. That leads me to believe something that I saw firsthand. And the thing that I see firsthand, Mr. Chairman, is very simple. All these covers that are being removed for the workers to go down and to do their work performance are left uncapped after they leave. So in effect, what happens is all night long, each and every neighborhood that experiences their work during the day experiences their work at night by hearing thump, 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 those caps flipping all night long. All night long, that's all you hear is thump, thump, thump. I had one on one side, on one street, and the other on the other side of the street, and I had to call the City of Revere to come down to finally fix this cap because the neighbors couldn't take it anymore. The sound was so offensive during the evening. Now, that's just some part of just a very simple process in the whole program of which we have been charged with for over $100 million to take care of. So if this very simple performance of neglect occurs, what else without the naked eye that we can't, and each and every one of us can't, make a determination if in fact the work that's being performed underneath these water sewers is correct? I don't see who's doing the oversight. They're supposed to be the oversight in this Boston Water Works or whatever, the National Water Work, going in there and doing it. But I don't see this happening. And if in fact it is happening, then CDM is left with a void in their responsibilities. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. And that rings a bell to me. That thing sends a signal to me that the performance is probably not occurring the way it should be. Now, they're supposed to be the eyes and ears and watchdogs for the City of Revere in a professional manner. And to that tune, they're making millions of dollars to do that. I don't begrudge them making millions of dollars. I do begrudge that the City of Revere's got to pay this tab. But that's been placed upon us by the federal government. There's not much more we can do with it. But I'm just concerned about, are we really getting the oversight review that we need? And that's a big question. And I think that it's going to go beyond this particular motion. And I think, never mind the state auditor, I think someone's got to come in and give us some sort of help to say, yes, your work is being done in a professional manner, and the people of Revere are not getting cheated one penny. That's all we want to hear, and that's all I would like to see. And because of this devastating amount of money that's being charged to us, and the bottom line of it, the taxpayer is paying for it, I think we are owed some sort of responsibility, and I think we're owed some sort of response. And I think that every single time we pass these tremendous amounts, 20 million, 30 million, come up here, we don't get any like review, or like, this is what we did, and this is how we did it. There's no accountability. I mean, you could tell me whatever you want is going on right outside my door of my home. I don't know. What do I know? That's not my profession. But what I do know is a very, very naked eye and ear. I can hear the sounds of their craftsmanship not working to perfection as it should be for our community. And I've experienced this conversation with several members of our community, and they all pretty much share the same response. Yeah, they hear this ungodly sound each and every night. Thump, thump, bang, the cover flipping. And so I think that with this in mind, and this request in order, I think it's a very, very valid point. And I look forward to a review. And I'm looking for outside review to review CDM. Someone to give a big brother watch over CDM, because to me, they have carte blanche. They can do whatever they want. And they can come back here and sell us a bill of goods. And how would we know any differently? How would we know? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Guinasso. Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been trying to fight this battle. I think my first motion went through in 2012 with the late Councilor Penta. We looking for some accountability to where the money is going. I also put, I think, a motion in a few months ago again, and I asked for where the money was. Every year we keep getting asked to bond for like 4 bonds for millions of thousands of dollars, and it's every year now. I mean, it goes back to administrations. So I haven't got any reply to any of the administrations. I think I've started with the first one with Mayor Ambazino and then Mayor Rizzo and now Mayor Arrigo. But the first two, at least they threw a bone to, like, Brown and Caldwell was around, and I believe they did the Pines pump station. But unfortunately, my ward, we got CDM, and I'm still getting complaints about the Goldie Street pumping stations. If you go down there at the end of Malden Street and see the pumping station, we got that beautiful field in the back, and all we got is weeds around, and the weeds, they don't keep it up. There's a house there at the end of, I believe it's right next to Vinnie Camerata. They did a trench. I've been trying to get it done for 2 years. They didn't do it right. Goldie Street looks like by the pumping station, looks like it was a bombed out area. And they had to do several repairs to the project since it started. But to get back to the finances, I'm very upset because all this money, people are saying, gee, we're paying all this money to nobody's watching them. We just give it to them and that's it. We're only good to sign the check. We don't know what the results are going to be. But I just happened to catch on Google that on August 30th, CDM had to pay Newburyport $5.5 million settlement for the Boston-based engineer firm that oversaw construction of Plum Island water and sewer system project more than a decade ago. This was a settlement with the Attorney General's office that involved the project that started in September of 1998. It contracted CDM to provide professional design services, exactly what we do. With the project, the design service contract, the CDM scope of work pursuit to the design service contract, including creating all plans, speculations, regulatory submits as necessary to prepare the project to be put to bid for construction. Now, that's exactly what we've been paying them for, 9 years now? And we have seen no results of, we don't know what they did. So I'm not saying that they did anything wrong. I just think that they should be a little more accountable on how they spend taxpayers' money. And so that's why I think this was a good motion by Councilor Rotondo. They could maybe have a state auditor perform an audit, and just to so we have some answers. We can't seem to get the answers any other way. So maybe this will be the way to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. Councilor Rotondo.
Thank you, Chairman Powers. I agree with all my colleagues, and in particular, Councilor Patch and Guinasso. The issue that brought this to my attention, I would say, was several people at the DPW yard had presented a concern that the culverts were not cleaned, as that was part of their contract. I'm not privy to the contract, so I can only surmise that that's possible, not that that is. Additionally, for the past 3 administrations, there has not been an audit of this particular company. And for all the reasons stated from my colleagues, it is the perfect reason to have an audit by the state. And I think getting an assessment as to costs, the scope, and the length of time in order to conduct this audit would be meaningful to the ratepayers of the city of Revere. And I thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rotondo. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is my belief whenever you have a contract of this magnitude, approximately $100 million, we have to have some checks and balances within the system. We take CDM's word on everything. We have no other way to determine if there's flaws in their analysis. Every time we have a representative from CDM come up, it's basically a dog and pony show. And I think Charlie's absolutely right on this issue, and I think we should require a state audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council President Guinasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a great motion on behalf of Councilor Rotondo. During my time on the council, I think this is one of the most expensive issues that we've dealt with. The consent decree that we've been put under has cost the city millions upon millions of dollars. And as Councilor Guinasso alluded to, every meeting last year, it was, 5 million here, 10 million here, 20 million here. And that's an extreme amount of money to be voting on such a regular basis, to not have any accountability. So I think it's very important that we look a little bit further into this, because essentially they're a monopoly within our city. There's no check or balance or another company looking into it to say, is there a cheaper way to do this? Is there an easier fix for this? And I think, I know the city's seen many issues with it, whether it be the culverts or whether it be the pump stations, but something that personally drives me crazy is when you see a brand new road paved and then a week later, a giant trench dug up in the road for a infrastructure fix like this, where I feel like there could be a little bit more planning and a little bit more organization on that, but that's another issue. So I think it's a great motion, and I look forward to seeing the result of it, because I think that this is one of the most expensive projects that our taxpayers are paying right now, is this consent decree. So I hope that we can work it out, and I hope that there are no issues with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Guinasso. I myself feel very strongly that anytime we spend $100 million or $1 million or $500,000, we should have somebody designated in the city to oversee that work when it's being done, to make sure that the city of Revere is getting the best quality of work for the money expended. I had a situation, and this was by, I think it's D&R Construction down on Sagamore Street. They're putting in new water lines, which we're very grateful for. They're long overdue. They brought their equipment down there a couple of weeks ago, and they left, didn't do anything, and came back all of a sudden one morning last week and started shutting off water. People were getting ready to go to work. They didn't have any water pressure, and if they had any water at all, the pressure was very slight. It was like taking a shower with a watering can. And nobody was notified down there. I think that no matter if you anticipate a problem with a job like that or you don't anticipate a problem, I think there should be somebody designated by the city to make sure that the residents are notified that there is going to be work being done, and we don't anticipate a problem, but in the event there is a problem, this is the number to call, whether it's the city engineer, DPW, or whoever is designated to be responsible for the oversight of that work down there, because people were very much inconvenienced. I received probably half a dozen calls from residents down there, And I myself was a little upset over it. And when you're going to do work in a neighborhood like that, any neighborhood, there should be some oversight. And I'm well aware of the article that Councilor Patch was referencing, the $5+ million fine. And I agree with him 100%. We've just got to make sure, again, that we're getting every bit of work that we're paying for. Now, somebody should be designated, and without being too repetitive, I don't know who that's going to be, but maybe the city engineer, because Nick Rystrom is a city engineer, and he seems to be very knowledgeable with regard to what is and what is not, and what should be going on. And also, I think that Joe Maglione, who is a water and sewer supervisor, I mean, that's his title, I believe. He's the head of that department. He should be in the loop, because this is an old city. There are neighborhoods where they installed sewerage and water lines 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, and that area down there is one of them, as well as Oak Island, because they were mostly summer cottages back then. And the lines that are down there, some of the shutoffs, the gate valves, they're not on any one plan. And I think Joe is very familiar with the location of these, and he should be in the loop at all times at meetings, making sure that people are not inconvenienced. Thank you very much.
Point of information?
Councilor Patch.
I agree with you 100%, Mr. Chairman, but, and I just want to mention that, you know, my motion back in July 23rd, 2012, and it did say that the motion was declared audit. So it was ordered by the mayor at the time that they should have done it. And I'll read that motion to you. The motion presented by Councilor Patrick Penta, that the mayor be requested to direct Robert Button, project manager of CDM, to meet with the City Revere, Director of Planning and Community Development, the Superintendent of the Department of Public Works, the City Engineer, and a Citizens Advisory Committee to be formed from streets impacted by CDM projects during the planning and design phase of the project and during the construction and post-construction phase, to provide for adequate city input into sewer and water improvement projects and to avoid adverse impacts on the neighborhood. Now, that was declared audit by the mayor, and it obviously was not done. And we wouldn't be having this conversation maybe today if they followed through on that motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Point of information, Mr. President. Charlie, what's the date on that?
That motion was from July 23rd, 2012.
That goes back. Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, is there any more conversation regarding?
Mr. Chairman, my only hope would be that this would go to the State Auditor and that we could get this done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Well, the motion itself will go to the mayor, and it's at his discretion to send it to the appropriate state agency. That's my understanding of how it works. Yeah, he has to sign the
We have to
council.
sign off the money. He signs off where it goes.
Yeah, exactly. Any more questions? Roll call on all of the issues before us this evening.
Mr. Chairman, you want a roll call on the Preservation Act, or you want to take that separate? Because I got Councilor Keith over there giving me a nice little grin.
We can take them separate. I have no, we already did the first one, right? Yeah. Yep.
On Councilor Rotondo's motion relative to the Community Preservation Act, Councilor Haas? No. No. Councilor Morabito is absent. Councilor Patch?
Well, I thought we couldn't, it was moot, or it was gone, we
Yeah,
can't
it
do
is,
it.
it is.
So why,
It's a move,
Oh, why don't we just withdraw
You
it
have to
altogether?
order it placed on file or
withdraw, he's withdrawing
Yeah,
the
that,
motion.
that sounds,
Motion is withdrawn.
placed on file.
Number 3.
On the motion of Councillor Rotondo relative to taking 24 Furness Street by eminent domain.
Withdrawn?
I'd still like it to be voted up. you
Okay,
know.
we'll vote it. Yeah,
Councilor
it's gonna be
Steve
taken.
worked very hard on it.
Yeah. Call the roll, please.
Councillor Haas? Yes. Councillor Morabito is absent. Councillor Patch?
yes.
Yes. Councillor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Rotondo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Janino? Yes, the motion will be passed.
Council,
The last one is...
Chairman, could we put that on as a committee, basically for every councilor? I mean, when we have something like that, I think it would be wise if they wish to be on it,
Well, we'll report this out tonight.
Yeah, accordingly.
And it'll be a vote of the full council. And the next one, State Auditor.
Motion of Councillor Rotondo requesting that the State Auditor perform an audit of CDM for all work conducted within the city. Councillor Haas? Yes. Councillor Morabito is absent. Councillor Patch? Yes. Councillor Rotondo? Yes. Council President Janino?
Yes.
Yes, and Chairman Powers?
Yes.
Yes. The motion will be favorably recommended to the full city council.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the October 3rd, 2016 meeting of the Ways and Means Committee of the City Council of the City of Revere, Massachusetts.